There is a place where an entire village floats on top of one of the highest lakes on Earth. This is Uros. No roads lead here, no streets connect the homes. Instead, small wooden boats carry people between islands built entirely out of golden reeds, more than 3,800 meters above sea level. Families eat, sleep, and raise their children on ground that isn't really ground at all, just reeds floating above cold water. But there's a strange problem hiding beneath their feet. The islands are slowly falling apart. Every week or two, fresh reeds must be added, or the ground would quietly sink into the lake. What began as a hiding place generations ago has turned into a way of life unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. And by the end of this journey, you'll understand why people still choose to live on water that could swallow their homes at any moment. The boat pulls away from the port in Puno, and almost right away, the whole city starts to shrink behind you. Tall buildings turn into tiny shapes. Roads vanish completely. Within a few minutes, there's nothing left to see except open water and endless golden reeds stretching out in every direction. This is Lake Titicaca, the highest lake in the world that boats can actually sail across. Then slowly, something strange appears on the horizon. Small platforms rise up out of the water, scattered across the lake like pieces of a puzzle nobody expected to find. There are no bridges connecting them to anything. The only way in or out is by boat, every single time. Stepping onto the first island feels different from anything most visitors have ever felt before. The ground moves, just slightly, but enough to notice immediately. It feels soft, almost bouncy under your feet, because there's no actual soil hiding underneath, just layer after layer of dried totora reeds, floating quietly above cold, dark water. For a moment, it stops feeling like a place you've simply traveled to. It starts feeling like somewhere that shouldn't really be possible. A small floating world, sitting calmly on top of one of the highest lakes on the entire planet. Locals move across this ground without a second thought, walking and working like it's completely normal. For a first-time visitor, though, every step still feels like a small test of trust in reeds, water, and generations of careful building. The Uros people didn't always call this lake home. Long ago, when powerful groups began pushing into their land, the Uros made an unusual choice. Instead of fighting back, they moved further out into the water, building floating islands where they could stay safe, far from anyone who wished to harm them. The lake quickly became their shelter, and it gave them everything they needed to survive. Fish swam beneath their new homes. Totora reeds grew thick all around them. Birds nested nearby, offering both eggs and feathers. Slowly, the water became more than just a hiding place. It became an entire way of life. And these islands had one more advantage that solid land never could. They could actually move. If danger ever came close, families could simply cut the anchor ropes holding them in place and drift towards safer, calmer water. Then, in 1986, a massive storm tore through the region, destroying many of the floating foundations that families had relied on for generations. Forced to rebuild, many communities moved their islands closer to the mainland, closer to safety, and closer to a changing world. The Uros call themselves Lupihakes, meaning children of the sun, and their stories still carry a deep, unbroken connection to this lake. They never simply ran away and hid from the world. Over many generations, they built an entire life on top of the very water that once offered them protection, turning a place of escape into a permanent home passed down from parents to children. For the Uros, an island isn't something they simply find already sitting in the lake. They build it themselves, piece by piece. It starts with totora reeds and thick root blocks called kili, which grow naturally beneath the shallow water. Workers cut these floating blocks, tie them tightly together, and anchor them firmly to the lake floor below. Then the real work truly begins. Thousands of loose reeds get placed across the surface, layer after layer, until the whole island becomes thick enough to walk on safely and strong enough to hold entire homes. Even the houses themselves are built almost completely out of totora. But no island here ever stays exactly the same for long. The reeds, hidden beneath the surface, slowly rot away in the water, so families must add fresh layers every 1 to 2 weeks without fail. After around 20 to 30 years, the old foundation finally becomes too weak to trust, and the entire building process must start again, from scratch. Here, an island was never meant to be permanent. It survives only because people keep choosing, year after year, to rebuild it. Step inside a Uros home, and the very first thing you notice is the floor itself. It feels soft. It shifts slightly under your feet with every single step, a strange reminder that you're standing on reeds, not solid earth. Inside, though, life looks surprisingly simple and familiar. Beds sit close together, covered in thick, warm wool blankets that help protect families from the freezing cold nights common at this high altitude. Many homes now use small solar panels to power basic lights and charge phones, while clean drinking water still arrives by boat, shipped in regularly from the city of Puno. Out here, the lake truly is part of everything. It provides fish for meals, reeds for building, transportation from island to island, and a steady source of income through tourism. Even household rubbish gets carefully collected and taken back to the mainland, rather than being left behind in the water to pollute the lake families depend on. Nothing on these islands was ever built to last forever, not really. The walls, the floors, the roofs, all of it depends completely on reeds and on people who remain willing to keep repairing everything over and over again, without complaint. The home itself looks simple enough at first glance, but actually keeping it alive, keeping it standing, keeping it dry, that part is anything but simple. It takes constant attention, careful planning, and a level of daily commitment that most people living on solid ground rarely ever have to think about. Children here grow up learning this responsibility early, watching their parents check for soft or rotting patches, adding fresh reeds wherever the ground feels weak. It becomes second nature over time. On Uros, taking care of your home means taking care of the ground you stand on, a lesson passed down quietly from parents to children. Every morning, here starts with the lake itself. Fishermen head out early, pulling in nets filled with karachi and ispi, small local fish often turned into a warm soup or fried up simply, served alongside Andean potatoes. For visitors, rainbow trout has become the more common choice, usually paired with hot quinoa soup and tea to help fight off the cold mountain air. Then there's the totora plant itself, eaten straight from the water. The soft inner core of the reed tastes crisp and watery, somewhat close to cucumber. Locals eat it fresh throughout the day, especially useful under the strong high-altitude sun beating down on the islands. Still, the lake simply cannot provide absolutely everything a family needs. Each morning, boats arrive from Puno carrying bread, eggs, rice, medicine, and gas cylinders for cooking. On their way back, those same boats carry fresh fish and handmade crafts toward the city to sell. There are no roads out here, no delivery trucks driving by. Instead, the market comes directly to the door, arriving quietly, one small boat at a time. The moment the first boats from Puno appear, the whole island suddenly comes alive. Visitors step carefully onto the floating platforms, meet local families face to face, and learn how these islands are built entirely out of totora, layer by careful layer. Entrance fees collected from tourists actually help the community too, funding island maintenance, anchor repairs, waste collection, and keeping the floating foundations strong enough to last. Then, often, the journey continues by traditional reed boat. Families earn extra income through boat rides, handmade crafts, small restaurants, and simple guest lodges. Every woven bag, embroidered tapestry, and miniature reed boat sold adds a little more to each household's income. But once the tourists finally leave for the day, ordinary island life quietly returns. Fishermen head back out onto the lake. Fresh reeds get gathered for repairs. Homes get patched up and strengthened. For many families living closer to Puno, tourism has become a genuinely important source of income. Yet it also creates one clear problem. When visitors suddenly stop coming, that income can disappear almost overnight. Every single morning, small boats leave the islands, quietly carrying children towards school. For Uros families, that boat means far more than simple transport. It is, quite literally, the road to education. Some younger children attend small primary schools, built right on the floating islands themselves, while older students must travel farther, heading toward Puno or nearby lakeside communities for secondary school. Healthcare works in a very similar way here. Basic medical care might be available directly on the islands for smaller issues, but anything serious always requires a boat trip to Puno. When the lake grows rough with wind and waves, even a normally short journey can suddenly feel much longer and much more dangerous. Many young Uros today study, work, and use the internet regularly once they reach Puno. Yet they still return home for festivals, family gatherings, and the ongoing work of rebuilding their islands. Every morning, a child rows quietly toward the modern world. Every afternoon, that same child rows home again. The island stays exactly where it is, but slowly, generation by generation, its children keep changing. For the Uros, Lake Titicaca is far more than just water surrounding their homes. It's deeply woven into their entire spiritual life. Their beliefs blend older Andean traditions together with Catholic faith, creating something uniquely their own. They honor Pachamama, known widely as Mother Earth, and on special days, families travel to sacred places nearby simply to pray. A small drink is often poured onto the ground as a quiet offering, asking for health, safety, and a smooth journey ahead. Every February, many Uros families travel by boat toward Puno, joining the massive festival of the Virgen de la Candelaria. There, they take part in music, colorful traditional clothing, and elaborate dances that fill the city streets for weeks. Then, later in the year, on June 21st, families mark the Aymara New Year, gathering quietly to welcome the very first light of the winter solstice with songs and heartfelt prayers. These songs, dances, and rituals keep their culture genuinely alive, year after year. The islands themselves may keep changing shape, breaking down, and slowly being rebuilt, but these deep traditions somehow keep their identity floating steadily forward, no matter what happens to the ground beneath their feet. Even the youngest children on these islands grow up learning the same songs, the same dances, and the same small rituals their grandparents once practiced. In a place where nothing physical seems permanent, these traditions have quietly become the one thing that truly never washes away. Around June 27, 2026, fire suddenly spread across part of the Uros Islands after cooking embers were caught by strong, fast-moving winds. The dry totora burned quickly, destroying 2 entire islands and leaving 11 families, 33 people in total, without any homes at all. Here, unlike almost anywhere else on Earth, the ground itself can actually catch fire. Once the flames finally died down, families immediately began gathering fresh totora, working together to rebuild the damaged foundations and homes they had lost. Black ash remained buried beneath the new layers, hidden underneath, but never fully forgotten by those who lived through it. Fire isn't the only danger threatening this way of life, though. Pollution, shifting water levels, and shrinking totora beds are also placing growing pressure on this fragile, floating world. Still, despite everything, the work continues, day after day, without pause. They build, it breaks, then they build again. And now, an even bigger question hangs quietly over the lake, waiting for an answer. How long can this floating world truly survive everything changing around it? The Uros are quietly stepping into a completely new chapter of their long history. Many young people now spend their days studying and working in Puno, using smartphones and learning skills that their grandparents never had access to. Some return home eventually, carrying fresh knowledge in fields like engineering, tourism, and small business, hoping to apply what they've learned back on the islands where they grew up. At the same time, older generations remain deeply focused on protecting the lake itself, along with the fragile way of life it has always supported. Solar power keeps expanding across the islands, slowly replacing older, riskier methods of lighting and cooking. Tourism, too, continues changing shape, shifting from simple day trips into longer, more immersive stays, where visitors actually sleep overnight inside traditional reed homes. Their children may end up living quite differently from their grandparents once did, surrounded by more technology, more travel, and far more contact with the wider world beyond the lake. But one thing seems likely to remain exactly the same: the deep, practical knowledge of how to build, repair, and carefully maintain a floating island isn't something easily lost. It survives because it has to, passed down carefully from hand to hand, generation after generation, regardless of what else changes around it. The lake itself is changing. The wider world is changing too, faster than ever before. Yet through all of it, the Uros keep quietly rebuilding, carrying their old knowledge forward into whatever future waits for them next, one careful layer of reed at a time. Visitors returning after several years often notice small changes: a new solar panel here, a fresh coat of paint there, maybe a young guide now speaking fluent English to curious tourists. Yet the heart of the place, the reeds, the boats, the quiet rhythm of daily life, still feels remarkably familiar, almost untouched by time. As the boat pulls away from the islands, the reeds slowly shrink into small golden dots against the endless blue water. What began generations ago as a way to escape danger has turned into something far bigger, a full way of life built entirely from patience, water, and quiet determination. The Uros never had solid ground beneath their feet. Instead, they simply learned how to build their own, over and over again, without ever giving up. Storms have torn through their homes. Fire has burned parts of their world to ash. Yet every single time, families gather more reeds, rebuild what was lost, and continue living exactly where their ancestors once chose to settle. Maybe that's the real story hiding here, quietly beneath the surface. Some places survive simply because the ground stays still. Uros survives because its people never stop building, layer after layer, generation after generation. If this journey stayed with you, hit subscribe and join us as we explore more incredible places like this one. And if you've ever visited Lake Titicaca yourself, tell us in the comments what surprised you most about life on these floating islands.